Well, hello, everybody that's watching to our third author panel of the week. We're going to be talking about tropes tonight, and I'm with Alexis B. Osborne, Lee Kirk, Vicki L. Holt, Starla Knight, and Christine Myers. Hi. If you're watching and you have a question, you can pop it down into the comments, and we will do our best to answer them during topics or at the very end of the live. And we're going to get started. We're going to open up with, what is your favorite trope to write? And I'm going to go with Christine first.
Thanks. Actually, my favorite trope is probably fated mates. I mean, because I did that with the Scion series, and I also did it with the Cyborg series. With the Cyborgs, they're genetic mates. I'm not sure what other tropes are included.
Starla?
Unmuting myself. So I have so many, but my favorite is probably an amalgamation of quite a few. Basically where an ordinary heroine goes to another planet and then like saves the world because she's just a human, but her perspective is so different and everyone just loves her. And one of the first places I saw this was in Restoree by McCaffrey. And I just like loved that book. And she's so ordinary, but she does amazing things. And she doesn't have to have superpowers. And I don't have superpowers. So I guess I was just living for that. And so no matter what book I write, I always kind of have that just going on in the background. And so I just love to read that as well. Like I loved it in the Grimm book by MK Eidem and the Tarnian series. She always has just like an ordinary woman who's an interior designer or like a chef or something like that, but it like changes the world of the aliens. And yeah, I just love reading that over and over because it's like the power that we have inside ourselves is enough, and we can like change an alien world with it and make it better, of course. So yeah.
Vicki?
All right, Starla, I'm sold. My favorite to write is really the like the hunter alien going after the human, not necessarily with evil intentions, but just that the whole concept of tracking a human through some kind of a wilderness. But then, well, I'll leave it at that for writing. There's a different one for reading.
Lee?
Okay, well, I love writing First Contact and Fated Mates are my two favorite to write. I got into doing the dating agency, and that's fun too, but it wasn't one of my original things. And I kind of do a little bit of the First Contact and Fated Mates, definitely Fated Mates in the dating agency books that I write. So,
Alexis?
Okay, where do I even start? Because I have so many. All right, I am a huge fan. I guess I am like a deviation from the norm in both reading and writing because I really do not like fated mates or insta love. I don't mind fated mates if they still have to go through all of the troubles of developing a relationship. You know, maybe they're fated, but maybe they fight it a little bit. You know, maybe it's like pheromones and they're like, oh, why him? And then slowly over the course of the book, they fall in love. I think that's beautiful. So I tend to write, I think I kind of gravitate more towards slow burns, and I like forced proximity, First Contact. I like normal everyday heroines thrust into like completely new surroundings. So like fish out of water tropes. I don't really care for like heroines who save the world like a dystopian type, like this 17-year-old is the one who's going to save humanity. I like normal everyday people. So I also don't tend to read or write a lot of like royalty romances, which I know is absolutely huge in alien and sci-fi romance. There's a lot of like alien kings, alien emperors, alien princes. But I think I like more of like the military dudes, or like scientists or doctors, or I think veterinarians are really cool, because if you were a human on an alien planet, like a doctor wouldn't do much good for you. You'd have to go to a veterinarian, which I think is just hilarious and funny. I think breeding is another huge one, especially in alien romance. So love to read it, love to write it, and definitely love like the secret baby and like the one bed trope. We were talking about that a little bit right before this started. Just like that real forced proximity where two worlds are colliding and they're mashed together.
I like military guys too, but I also like I've written a couple kings. But I love enemies to lovers and fated mates, and I kind of like mush them together. Like they're fated and it's kind of insta love, but they hate each other first. And then I'm real big on aliens invade Earth, which I've built my whole backlog is based off of that. But that's like my favorite thing to write. Are there any tropes you don't write? And we will go with Lee first.
Okay. Amnesia. I don't write amnesia. Let's see, what else? Bully romance. I won't write that either. And probably not ever secret baby. Sorry.
I don't like bully romance either. I struggle with reading it mostly. Vicky.
Same. I love my heroes to be really respectful of women and their love interest. Although in book 2, he's kind of a jokester. What I definitely don't write is any kind of stuff involving babies, or not a lot with children. It's not because I don't love babies and children. I had 6 children, and my oldest is 27 and my youngest is 9, and I'm really over it.
I can relate to that. Let's go with Starla.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm going to jump on the bully train just because I also like a very respectful hero, and there's already so much going on in sci-fi. It's a lot of us enjoy that like first awareness of a new world and coming to a new place, and it's like a travel guide to the imagination, and then to have just a really mean, like negative experience with that, I can see how it's really compelling. I have definitely read like ones that you just cannot put down, but when there's that much antagonism, but I also like the fated mate trope a bit, like the ones where they're like gonna end up together and they like each other immediately. I really like that. So I gravitate towards that anyway, but I can definitely see the appeal of other ones, especially when it's like really well done. I used to say I would never write dark, and then my last book is a little bit of a gritty world with like conquerors and like ordinary humans who are going to change things. But yeah, I used to say dark, but it's just a dark world. It's like dark chocolate with milk inside, because I'm not a dark writer. But I can people who can do it well, they can do it, do it. Yeah, but I can't. So I better not.
Alexis.
So I talked about it a little already, but fated mates. Yeah, I struggle with this one because I do like dark romance and I do enjoy dubcon. So I don't mind fated mates where it's like pheromones and it is kind of like against their will and they fight and tussle a little bit. I enjoy that part of it. Kind of like feeds that little dark romance reader in me. But the insta love, super happy, or friends to lovers, I cannot. No, I'd rather they be trying to like stab each other literally with like knives and like an enemies to lover thing than friends to lover. I guess I like the adventure and the darker sort of depths that love can drive you to. So where I don't really love the insta love and fluffy, everything sunshine and roses from the start. And that's just, you know, I know it can be done well. I know it can be done great. Everyone does a really good job writing these. And obviously readers love them and they find something really comforting in that. But there's a book out there for everybody. Let's see what else. I have not written like any sort of like cowboys or farmers. I think that would be fun to write in the future, but I don't have any books planned for that right now. But I do enjoy colonization. But I don't know, that would take a ton of research. There's just so many tropes and there's not enough time.
If there's one, like as soon as you said friends to lovers, like I cringed on the inside. I can't stand it because I guess it's because like for me, when the hero like sees the heroine, like he's either all in or he's not. And like if he's her friend first, I'm like the only way I can handle it is if he's pretending. If he's pretending to be her friend, I'll accept it. Otherwise, like he either loves her immediately or he doesn't, which is the opposite because you don't like insta love, but I do. And so like I couldn't do friends to lovers. I don't like it. Christine.
I don't write reverse harems. There's just too many guys for one person to handle. I kind of stay away from, like Alexis said, the insta love where they have the pheromones and they have an attraction, but they don't even know if they like each other yet. And even if they start liking each other right away, they still have to figure out how their lives will mesh together, especially when they come from way different backgrounds. Can't think of anything else. Well, I don't write secret babies either. They usually have the babies at the end of the story with most of mine. Trying to think what else. I think that's about it.
I'm putting food in.
I like always said I would never write reverse harem. I wrote a menage once and it was very difficult. It was the hardest thing I think I've ever written. But I don't know, I think I might give it a try. So like I would say that I would never write reverse harem, but I've been thinking about it lately. We're going to move on and discuss flipping tropes on their head. And we're going to start with Alexis.
Okay, so this was a question that I posed and everyone was like, okay, but what do you mean? And so the explanation I gave was alien abduction, but it's the humans abducting the alien. So taking a very familiar and comforting trope and flipping it on its head and doing something a little bit different. And this is, you know, this is going to be a tricky question to talk about. This isn't something that I have personally written, and I struggle to even think of like concrete examples of books that have really hit you over the head with that they have done this. I do read some books that are alien romance, but the alien is the one who's enslaved by the human. I think that would be another one because usually in alien romance, it's the human woman who's enslaved. but I definitely love a good submissive man occasionally. So sometimes it's fun to spice it up and do things that are a little bit out of the box and not what you would normally see.
When I thought about this, I had one immediate story that came to mind, and I'm probably going to fudge the title up. But it was by Amanda Milo, and it was The Orc and the Sister Wives. I can't remember exactly what it was. I remember I tried to read it. It's not like, I totally commend her for doing it. Like, holy shit, that was awesome. But like, I can't do it because like more than one woman to one guy. No. But like, I just immediately thought of that. Like, she just took reverse hair and was like, I'm going to do this and it's going to be fucking awesome. And I thought that was cool. Let's go to Lee.
I know I've read something where the human kidnaps the alien, or the heroine kidnaps the hero, and I'm drawing total blank on what story it was, what book it was, or who it was by. I'm sorry, guys. But I just, it was kind of an interesting question, because I'm sitting here thinking about it and I'm thinking, I don't think I've written anything like that. Well, I kind of have, it's just not out yet. And it's coming out later this year. But I'm not sure if it really qualifies, because the heroine is abducted by aliens, green aliens kind of thing, right? And then she ends up kidnapping a different alien to get herself back to Earth, and she kidnaps him. So I don't know if that counts, but
Starla.
So I have a little bit of a reversal. My 7 Virgin Brides for 7 Were-Dragon Billionaires series is set on Earth, and dragon shifter aliens have invaded, but humans can't shift and they have no valuable natural resources. So the dragons have just come to steal our art, our music, our clothing, and that's like the resources, our creativity. That's what they want. And in their empire, the female dragons are the ones that breathe fire, and the males are like subservient to them. So they're constantly expecting these their women on Earth to like start going crazy, and so they're always like trying not to like piss off any of the human women, just in case we like start flame throwing people. But obviously we're human, so that's like a whole thing that just goes through the series. And then one of the 7 Were-Dragon Billionaires is a female. It's in book 4, and so she's a dragon shifter, and she has a relationship with a hero, a human hero, and so at the end he gets locked in a tower, and she has to go and rescue him. So spoiler alert. So anyway, the dragon shifter has to rescue the hero princess from the tower scene, and I just had a lot of fun writing that. But that's the only thing that I have. I think it's great, twist things up, make it interesting and fun. And and also, I don't know why virgins. I just thought it would be fun, but like, there's that whole song, like, do virgins taste better? Why do you, if you guys are in, why dragons and virgins? I really don't know, but it was super fun to write. And most of my heroes are virgins, actually. So that's sort of a twist that I do in like literally all of my books. So, but I don't know how that happened. It just happened. So they're too busy for love. They're too busy for romance till they meet the heroine, and then they're just swept away. And yeah, anyway, there you go. My twists.
It literally sounds amazing, by the way. Christine.
Well, I actually don't think I do that too much. Turn the tropes upside down or something. But when I was thinking about writing my cyborg books, instead of having them be in the middle of the war. They were just getting out of the war. And after the war, they weren't sure what they were going to do. They had started their own planet, but then one of the admirals that was above Viking Dark said that he should go back to Earth and help them rebuild civilization, because at the beginning of the war, all the cities all the biggest cities in Earth had been bombed to rubble. And they were supposed to get mates at the end of their at the end of the war. They're supposed to go back to Earth, and they would be matched up with a woman, and then they would go and make a family. Well, it turned out that they just told them that, and they brainwashed them into believing it for their whole lives. And so the stories actually started on post-apocalyptic Earth.
That's cool. Vicky?
Honestly, I feel like writing in science fiction romance allows you the freedom to play with all of the tropes. You know, because Fish Out of Water is female, a human on a different planet. And I mean, you can just take any of the tropes and kind of run with it. I've noticed in my writing, there's kind of an evolution of, so when I started reading romances as a teenager, I was reading all of the damsel in distress stories, right? And it's so interesting now as an adult, just to see how society has changed and that it needs to change. And now we have our heroines who are saving themselves. And that's kind of the biggest evolution for me as a writer and a reader, is just is yearning for that strength, that inner strength that your woman character brings to the table, and she's going to save herself. And like the tagline for book 3 is, on Predator Planet, no one comes to your rescue. And that's, in a way, it's kind of dark or disappointing to think about that. At the same time, I've had some incredible trials in the last 28 years, and no one came to my rescue. You know, my husband and I had to do it ourselves with some of the really difficult stuff that came, and so it's hard to not be saved, to not have someone come in and save the day. But you learn so much about yourself when you rescue yourself, and that's this kind of theme that has really only gotten stronger in my Predator Planet series. And so it's kind of cool. I write these heroines, and I'm just in awe of these women, and so are the aliens.
Yeah, I can actually see like both sides. Like, I like the damsel in distress trope. I also like to not write the damsel in distress trope. And I could kind of see, like how you said, like you go through your own trials and stuff and you have to save yourself. And so like on the one hand, I want to read that heroine who does that for herself. On the other hand, it is nice to escape and imagine some big buff knight coming in to save the day. It's like I get both sides of it. We're gonna go to the staple alien abduction trope. And thoughts. Starla.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like in a lot of ways this sort of thing has so in the past, there used to be the whole abduction by the pirate king or by the, I'm going to say this wrong, the sheik, and swept away to his like alien but on Earth like area, kingdom where you're, you know, subservient to him, but you have to like reassert your own power. And there's a lot, I think that like, especially for women, society is kind of crushing for us. And we like, there's so many expectations on us in everyday life that we are always subservient to some expectations of who we are and what we can do, are the limits of our power, and what we're allowed to dream for and dream about. And so to read one of these stories, which has now moved from somewhere on Earth to somewhere off of Earth, where we have even less power and even less resources, and yet we're still, you know, us, and having to navigate this crazy world, I feel, yeah, that there's a great catharsis that can happen escaping into this world and watching a woman be at the absolute lowest level of power and then like coming through it and coming out the other side and winning. And yeah, exactly, changing the world. And like, yes, and it's something that many of us do not get to do on a daily basis when we're filing our taxes and waiting in line at Starbucks and we don't have exact change. And you know, it's you just want to read about going to an alien planet where you don't even have that. So and you know, and then if it's the Mars needs women trope, which I also love, then you're like super valuable and super important, and you can rule and order people around as soon as you find your inner power. So that's what I think about this trope and its enduring power, and why you can do it so many different ways, and so many different ways are going to be super satisfying to someone and me as a reader.
Alexis?
So I do read them. I actually have not written them. So I have written kidnappings, but in my universe, humans are already in space. So they're not getting abducted from Earth, from a normal humdrum life and being thrust onto an alien planet. They're already exploring the galaxy, seeing new things, meeting aliens, and all that shebang. But I do enjoy reading it. I think probably my two favorites that I've read are Michelle Dianer's Dark Horse series, which is phenomenal. I don't know if any of you guys have read it, but it's about these normal everyday women who are abducted from this one small town, like remote in the rural area on Earth, and they are taken by these awful aliens, but the ships are sentient. They're like an artificial intelligence that can learn and think. So the ships end up actually helping the heroines get away from the evil, awful aliens. So I thought that was hilarious. I love the whole series. And then I think it's Anne Aguirre's book. I believe it's Strange Love, where the heroine gets accidentally abducted by the hero who doesn't really mean to do it, and then kind of gets in a bad spot where he can't return her because abducting humans is illegal because we're like a protected planet, which is another common thing in sci-fi romance. But she gets abducted along with her dog, and he puts translation chips in both of them. So then suddenly the dog starts speaking. And I think it's so fun. I really enjoy that like first contact type of thing. So alien abduction plays with that a lot. I love miscommunication. I love language barriers. You know, I love translator implants, or if they have to learn language the hard way. I love cultural, you know, clashing. So all of that ties in really nicely to the alien abduction trope.
Christine?
Most of the ones I read, I think they're abducted by aliens and then sold as slaves, and then a different alien will come and rescue them, and then they would fall in love with the alien who rescued them. It's sort of like the damsel in distress, but it usually turns out well. I really recently read the Drixonian, I think they're on this planet where they ride motorcycles, hover motorcycles. And these women were kidnapped by slavers, and they rescued them from the slavers, and they were fated mates, but they didn't, well, they had fated mates. It was an instant love.
Vicky?
And
I really loved what everyone else had to say. I haven't written any alien abduction myself. And honestly, I don't think I've read that many, if any. I can't think of any other than Strangelove, which I adored. So yeah, sorry, I can't contribute much.
Lee?
Now, I'm not sure I can contribute much either. I do enjoy a well-written abduction, but not in the sense of dubcon or non-con. I just can't go there. But just about everything else I can pretty much handle. But
yeah, I've written a lot of abduction, kind of in like a roundabout way. Like almost all my stories end up in that general direction. So I personally enjoy it, but I also like it just brings me back to like for flipping tropes and stuff. I like reading stories where it's completely opposite. Most common tropes in sci-fi romance. Let's go to Vicky.
Where to start? I mean, colonization. I've seen a lot of jungle, like tropical planets. I've seen a lot of desert planet. Like, so the quality of the planet comes into play. I see that a lot. The alpha male, I see that a lot. Language barrier, of course. I'm working on a project right now with, and the translating chip of the visiting alien hero is still trying to catch up. So the heroine says, gosh darn it. And I'm not like cleaning it up. She actually says, gosh darn it. And his translator chip translates it to, he says something like, oh, she invoked an ancient god to banish the item into purgatory, and so he's like kind of careful with her after that. So yeah, the miscommunication is a really big one, and then my personal favorite is just the whole idea of alien worlds. You know, you have authors creating worlds where they don't breathe oxygen, you know, things that we take for granted as humans. I'm reading Planet Zero, and metal is corroded instantly or almost instantly on the planet, and there's no water. Like, it really fries your brain as you're like, oh my gosh, this is a serious dilemma. How are they going to take care of this? So I mean, that I'm just scratching the surface of what's out there with science fiction, but that's what makes it so awesome is, and I don't know if you guys do this too, create a problem that you're like, I can't even solve this problem. But it's beautiful. It's a beautiful process, because then it really forces you to think outside the box, think outside the galaxy, think outside the normal laws of physics. And yeah, it's exciting. It's like the best subgenre to write in, I think.
Lee?
Oh my gosh. Most common tropes. Well, I think the abduction trope is probably the single most common. But I love, like I said, I love first contact with Earth. I just, the language barriers are so fun to write about, you know, and cultural differences. Those are so fun to write about. So if there's a lot of that kind of stuff in a book, I almost don't care what trope it is, you know, just, you know, delve into the meat of what it means to have that first contact, and what problems can arise from that, and what good things can arise from it too. But the problems are a lot of fun.
Starla?
Yeah, I said it before that science fiction is like a chance to be a travel guide into that imagination. And so whenever you travel, you're sort of learning about a new place, but you're also like learning about yourself and like interrogating what you know about your own culture and why you have the values that you have, or your history. And that's why those miscommunications are so much fun, because you can see yourself through alien eyes, and create other alien worlds that interrogate specific aspects of, you know, the current reality. Like when you read old science fiction, like they were definitely interrogating a certain like understanding of humanity at that time. And like that's why like now that science fiction is so different, and we even have science fiction romance as its own thing, and it's about relationships and what should they be, and or what could they be, or, you know, yeah, I just love that there's so much openness and possibility, which doesn't really answer your question, which was about most common tropes, but I think that everybody else has done that really well. So I'm just gonna throw this out there.
Christine?
Well, of course, we talked about the alien abduction and colonization. Another common one, I think, is invasion, where they invade the earth and take over, and the women mated up with aliens. I know I just read one like that, and some of the aliens were dragon shifters, and some of them were other kind of aliens. And of course, the colonization. And I had some notes here, and I'm trying to find them. And mail order brides is another one. That was one that I did with mail order brides. They ended up on a prison planet. They were recruiting mail order brides, and then they sent them to this prison planet that was having a reality show for the whole quadrant of planets in this empire, and it was changed things around a bit. I had then there's the pirates. They could get kidnapped by pirates, and some of the pirates have been like semi-benevolent pirates. I think. And then there's like the monster ones, where everybody's fighting against a monster. That's a very common science fiction trope, which I'm not real fond of, but it seems like all the ones that you're finding on TV these days is not just a science fiction, but it turns into a horror movie where they're killing and not much romance going on. I think that's all I have.
Alexis.
So for most common science fiction romance tropes, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but Mars Needs Women is a huge one. You see that one a lot where all of the females of a species have usually either died from some sort of virus, some sort of natural disaster. So all of a sudden that alien race needs human women in order to breed and repopulate. And that brings up like panspermia, which I think is a really cool concept, where it's the idea that instead of us, the universe being like a dark forest where we're all stumbling around in the dark and there's all these alien races, but we haven't actually met. It's this idea that some sort of like master race came through the universe, like left little seedlings on various planets, and then they turned into different races. And I think that's a really interesting idea. And that kind of bridges that sort of like genetic gap that you would find otherwise. Like if we have some sort of common ancestor, that would explain why all of a sudden we can have babies together. So that's a big one. And then we talked about alien abduction, and I would say also gladiators. Yeah, I see a lot of that, of like women being sold at auction or bought up by like gladiator pits to be given out as like battle prizes and war prizes and like trophies. And then just like slave markets in general. That's another really big one.
We do have a question from Julie. Scroll back up to grab it. When you write, do you approach your book with the intent to use a certain trope, or do you allow the tropes to evolve naturally? Christine.
I usually have an idea of what I'm going to do when I go to write the book. Sometimes it goes off on a tangent, but usually, like I had the one series, the Mail Order Bride series of interstellar matchmaking, and I actually, all of them are matched up with cyborgs that are colonizing different planets. And that's another spinoff from the Nairobian Mate series, where they're like feline humanoid aliens that are part of the population of their planet Narova, and they have infiltrated the Earth so that, and interbred with humans, but they don't know they're there until later when they have to save Earth from some other aliens that are causing mass destruction on the planet. So usually I have some idea where I'm going with it.
Vicky.
Yeah, same here. I definitely will have kind of a main trope, and then others may trickle in and develop as the story goes on, since I am a pantser. So.
Alexis.
So I definitely do. I start with a trope. It's basically always like the scene that pops into my head that inspires the story is always a trope. So that's what I start with. I don't meticulously plan them out in advance, because I am a pantser as well. So I'll just start writing. With Engineering Fate, the scene that came to mind was a human who's already in space and doing space exploration, who's very space savvy, gets sucked through a wormhole and sent to another part of the universe where she has first contact with aliens, and humans have never met aliens before. And she promptly gets kidnapped by poachers who don't really care that she definitely doesn't look like just some animal and stick her in a cage. And then she gets discovered by an undercover cop who is there to bust the poaching ring. And so you have a lot of tropes right there. You have fish out of water, you have first contact, you have pirates, and then you have like a police officer. So that's 4 tropes right there in one scene, basically. So I'll always start with that and then just go from there. And then the characters really drive the story, and they pretty much tell me what they're going to do.
Lee.
Okay, I definitely don't want to know what I'm doing ahead of time. I'm just like, there it is. And I figure out the tropes later. So yeah, lots of fun. It's for me, it's just like, okay, I need to write the story, needs to come out, and I'm not consciously thinking about what the tropes are until later. And they start coming out, and so they start becoming clear and obvious to me, and then it's like, oh, okay, I know what I'm doing right here. I know what this means here. So yeah.
Starla?
I think I just start with my core story, which is that I'm just always telling that same story that's usually an ordinary woman going, getting tugged into some extraordinary world and then upending it. And I also have always like love gives us superpowers. So after she discovers her love and her full inner potential, then sometimes she gets like literal superpowers. It depends on what kind of a world I'm doing, but only with love, because sci-fi, it's romance. Come on, I can do that. But otherwise I just try to always think of the characters and try to make them as like opposite as possible, because I think that's more interesting. So you have like a warrior and like a nurse, like, so healer and destroyer, and just that, but for everything, so like boss and intern, I'm always trying to do something like that. And then after that, whatever tropes happen, just enjoy them as they show up. So.
Yeah, I don't have like a way of doing it, or like I don't plan it out. I will say that when I started writing, I had like a hit list. Like I knew I was going to write SFR, and I was like, these are the ones that I've read and I loved, and I have to write. Like they motivated me to write an alien romance, but I've done all of them now. But that was way back in the way back. I'm going to ask you this as both a reader and a writer. Where did you first see your favorite trope, or where was it done best? So favorite trope as a writer or as a reader. And let's go with Vicky.
I need more time.
When we come back to you?
Yeah, circle back.
Lee?
No, really, no, circle back. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so I'm going to say it wasn't necessarily a book, and it wasn't necessarily romance, but there's, do you guys remember Starman? Okay, good. I loved that. And it wasn't really a romance, because he leaves at the end, right? But I just loved that as a first contact. So E.T. was great for a first contact too. That was fun, not a romance. But yeah, and I'm going back because these are like when I first saw my favorite trope, the first contact trope. Of course, Star Trek, there was a lot of first contact stuff going on there, but it was the humans making contact with other planets. And Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Yeah, I love that movie.
Starla.
Did I unmute myself? Okay, good. Yeah. All right. I already said two of my favorites. Like the very number one is Restoree by McCaffrey, which I like have on the shelf behind me, and I'll like get it out. But because that was the ordinary woman kidnapped to another alien planet and then like saving the freaking world. I love that. And then, but I also Grimm by MK Eidem, just love that. That's the alien abduction trope. It's so good. And then I'm also gonna say Cynthia Sachs's first one in her Cyborg Sizzle series. I think it's called Releasing Rage, and that one's really dark, but beautiful. Anyway.
Alexis?
So I'm gonna state the obvious here, since I do mostly aliens who look very alien and monsters. Beauty and the Beast. I think it's like a tried and true, beloved. I will never get sick and tired of reading a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I don't care if it's like a direct, literal, okay, Beauty and the Beast, fantasy, historical setting, like 15th century France, whatever. Or if it's like they're just taking like that little bit of theme and it's very subtle, like it doesn't matter. If it's Beauty and the Beast or like Hades and Persephone, I'm gonna read it. And I have two favorites. One that is a very literal retelling, and it's an old book. It's called Rose Daughter, and it's very beautifully written. Can't remember who wrote it. Was it Mercedes Lackey? I don't remember. Mercedes Lackey has written a few as well that were very good. And then I think a more rough one that's like more subtle. It's not like a direct translation. I know a lot of us love this one, Radiance by Grace Draven. We'll never get sick of it. I'll read Beauty and the Beast romances in every genre but contemporary. So I'll read it historical, I'll read it fantasy, I'll read it paranormal, I'll read it science fiction. Just can't get enough of it.
Christine?
I have to say it was The Day the Earth Stood Still. I saw that the first version, even though it wasn't a direct romance, this alien came to Earth to warn people to, basically to save them. And I think in my own mind, I materialized it as a romance. What if they came to Earth and it was just, you met them and fell in love with them? And I think that probably started my my love for science fiction romance. And I also saw the second version with Keanu Reeves. They panned that, but I thought it was pretty well done. And then I used to have I used to make up stories in my head about aliens coming to Earth and people falling in love with them and making a life for themselves together. And of course, Star Trek. Unfortunately, I hate to admit this, but I saw Star Trek when it originally came out.
Don't mind me, I'm eating the corpses.
And I watched them all. Every series, every movie, I've seen them all.
Vicky?
Child, get into the day.
Okay. Let's see. I would say I discovered sci-fi romance when I read Ice Planet Barbarians. But I also, I forgot about this. I was reading some, like when self-publishing was really quite new, there was a series by Erica Stevens called The Ravening, I think. Familiar. I loved that story. Total slow burn. but just that idea of the alien who was in disguise, he passed as human, which is actually a trope we didn't really talk about. But then when you start to realize that he's an alien and he exerts some of his strength and power as an alien, I just remember like, oh my, being completely taken. It kind of it brought me back to, you know, when my formative years, I loved King Kong. Like he was when I was 5, I loved him. I would fall asleep at night dreaming I was in the palm of his hand. So that seed of, you know, otherness has been there for a long time, I would say.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. It's Beauty and the Beast for me. Gargoyles, I want to say, right? That cartoon. Inuyasha, like all that stuff when I was little. And then you kind of like discover science fiction romance or science fiction movies and Star Trek and all of that. And then you just kind of somehow meld the two together. But I think it was The Ravening by Erica Stevens that did it for me. She was one of the first authors I ever read on a Kindle. I recommend that series to like PNR readers, fantasy readers who have not like touched SFR. Like if you're dipping your toes in, go for that one. It's so perfect. It's a fantastic series. And S.E. Smith kind of introduced me to science fiction romance for the first time. And I was like, this is a thing that I can read all the time. Holy shit. And that was kind of how, like, just what did it for me. And that's going to lead us into our last question of the night, which is, why do tropes work for readers? Which I feel like is all of those reasons and more. So let's go with Starla.
I don't have anything to add. I mean, yeah, you love what you love and it speaks to you deep in your heart. And there's so many different ways to read the same stories that are just so enjoyable because they touch something different. I'm just going to keep like recommending like books that I loved in the background here. So, okay. It's been great. This has been super fun. I'm really thankful for this opportunity to chat with you guys.
We've loved having you. Alexis.
Okay, why do tropes work for readers? I think of writing kind of like a recipe, and tropes are the ingredients that go into them. They are familiar, they're comfortable. We read them, we remember the books and the movies and the TV shows that we have enjoyed before, and it gives us those warm, fuzzy feelings and brings up all that joy that we've had. You know, I think that's really what it comes down to. And someone's always going to have their preferences. You know, some people will read the same thing over and over and over and over again. That's what they like. Others will branch out and they'll read a little bit of everything. I'm more of a little bit of everything person, but I always come back to that Beauty and the Beast one. I think that's absolutely my favorite. And that is 110% nostalgia. I think Disney really didn't know what can of worms they opened for like a lot of us. I mean, and you mentioned gargoyles, and that's another one. And was that Disney too? No, it wasn't. Okay. But yeah, I think it comes down to that, to comfort in the familiar and finding old friends again.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was Disney, but yeah, it's nostalgia. Like when I think of that, and I just think of myself as a little girl watching that and just falling in love with them, just like I did with the Beast. And it's just like, if this was going to happen, it was bound to happen. If you watch any of that stuff, you are right where you're supposed to end up. Lee.
Excuse me. I totally agree with Alexis. It's a comfort zone thing. That's why tropes work for any reader, I think.
Christine.
For me, it's the sci-fi combining with the romance. I remember when I first started writing and sending out manuscripts, I got letters back, oh, the writing's good, but this is not commercial. Sci-fi romance was not commercial. And when I discovered that it was a thing, that I could write and publish sci-fi romance and actually sell it, I think that's the main trope that is like an umbrella over all these other tropes that go into making sci-fi romance. And it got to the point now these days, any fiction I read, it's sci-fi romance. And I think that in itself is why it works. And there's so many different aspects to it, which is what we've been discussing all evening about the different elements that you can put together and make it original, even if, well, like the abduction romance or the cyborgs and finding their mates and stuff, even though it's been done by somebody else, when you do it differently. You put the rest of the story together so that it's original. And I think that's all I have.
Vicky?
Well, it's just been a pleasure to watch everyone's faces light up when they talk about, their favorite trope, their favorite kind of story, and nostalgia and from their childhood. And that's what, that's what the readers are going for. And I feel so, maybe this is cheesy, I feel so privileged and honored to be a part of that for some people. Each of us are really lucky to have, at least a handful of fans, and some of you, scads and scads of fans. But what a pleasure to, invite readers into a world and provide for them that, their favorite trope, their favorite trip back to, a nostalgic time where they felt some happiness and joy, and kind of let them feel alive again. Yeah.
All right, well, that was our last question of the night. If anybody has any questions, you can pop them in the comments before we sign off. We'll try to answer them. I do want to take a moment to remind you guys that the Abduct SFRCon giveaway is still going on. You can go onto the website to get all the information on how to enter. I have a table full of signed books to give away, so make sure you sign up for it. The link is also in the top. But yeah, I think that was it. And I want to thank everybody for watching and authors for a successful third author panel of the week. And I think
that was a lot of fun, Erin. Thank you very much for coordinating all of these. This is my second one, and I've just had a blast. This is so fun listening to everybody and feeling like, oh, hey, I'm not alone. I'm doing, I'm thinking all these same things, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's like we have awesome brains, and it's nice to like meet people with the same kind of awesome brain. All right, well, I guess there are no questions, so we will say good night and see you tomorrow night. We're gonna be talking about I'm blanking. Oh, that is our spicy one. That's our alien dick one. You guys want to hang out for that one? That one's at 9 o'clock EST, and the converged, whatever that word is, times are in the banner if you're unsure of your time zone. But yeah, so good night.
Night.